All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to what will be the first of many webinars based on a lot of the concepts that we've written about in our book. I'm Nick Bonfilio, CEO and co-founder of Aptrinsic, and today's webinar focuses us on how to deliver release experiences that your customers will truly love. I'm also so thrilled to welcome Travis Kaufman as our guest speaker today. We first met while we were both working at Marketo together, and he was in my team where he had responsibility for Marketo's platform and ecosystem, as well as Marketo's AdBridge product offering, which was a huge success for us at Marketo. He's worn many hats throughout his career with roles in engineering, product management, product marketing, and business development. And during his 15 years of experience, he's delivered innovative products across the marketing and sales tech landscapes, including artificial intelligence, social media marketing, display advertising, and CRM sales forecasting. Today, Travis is going to share with us his experiences bringing products to market, and more specifically on how to go about increasing the adoption of newly released products or features by creating better release experiences. Okay, great. So before I hand things over to Travis, let me cover a few housekeeping items. We will be sending out a recording along with slides after today's webinar, so no need to worry about taking notes or doing any screen grabs. Instead, we encourage you guys to think about some questions or challenges you may be experiencing, and for all of us to explore them together during the Q&A section afterwards. If you have questions during the presentation, we would really appreciate if you guys got onto the Twitter channel and actually use the hashtag product experience. We're monitoring that for Q&A, and we'd love to have a great discussion afterwards. So with that said, and without further ado, let me hand off the presentation over to Travis.
Great, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining today. As Nick mentioned, so we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of launching new products and new capabilities. I want to share what most of us are doing today and why it doesn't work. And then I'd like to share at the end, a framework that we can all use going forward that's going to help us all, to increase adoption as we release new products. So I've launched products at large organizations and small startups alike, and the thing that's I find the same across all of them is this frenzy that comes right before a release, right? So there's a lot of pressure on you as a product leader. You've done all the hard work leading up to this point, and you've validated with customers. You've gotten buy-in from your leadership team to go execute and build something. You've navigated a number of technical challenges with your R&D team. You've now gotten to the stage where you're ready to launch a new product and get in the hands of the customers. And you've got a lot of work to do around enabling, if you have a sales team or if you have customer-facing teams, letting them know what's coming up, helping them prepare for it. The focus that I wanted to look at today was really around what is our interaction with our customers around this process. So us as either someone who's in a product management type role or product marketing role, someone who's got responsibility for the success of this deliverable. And what the majority of us are doing today is really sending out a release note and calling it a day. And we're leaving our customers with this big, single email that gets sent out to everyone. And, there's not to dismiss the amount of work that goes into building this out. You've spent time now looking at all of the sprint user stories, all the sprints that lead up to this release. You're looking at all the user stories. You're trying to triage which bugs you want to communicate. So you're doing a lot of work to get to this email. But what I find is that the work that leads up to this doesn't match the result. And we're going to talk about why that is. The second item here that we do is that within this release notes, we've consolidated all this information, and there's really rarely ever a clear call to action. These are all things that we can address. They're all within our power to change. And the last item, you doing your best. I know that each of us has gone through and we've omitted things from release notes, and we've said, the customer's really not going to care about this. Maybe it's not a large enough feature to talk about. But at the end of the day, this communication is, for the most part, too long and people aren't reading it. So what happens after you've sent this release out, right? You sent this release notes out and you published it. Really what happens next, and this is one of the conversations that I've had, is that you go out, you want to find customers that are using it, And you go out to your trusted set of customers that you've built, or if you have a customer council, you start talking with them, and you ask them, how is this going? Like, have you seen what we've done? And they're like, no, I've never heard of it. They come back and you're dumbfounded. You're like, man, I did all the things I'm supposed to do. My sales team knew about it, my success team knew about it. I sent out the release note, and then this is still the response: is that there's still just too much. Unfortunately, there's too much going on for them to know what's happening about it. So, another scenario that you will end up coming across is, this one here, right? You have a customer that has, been using your solution or your product for a long time now, and they've switched to use a competitor because what they thought was missing in your product. And your response, you're of course shocked, and your response is, hey, we released that months ago. Why didn't you know? And it's really not their responsibility to know. It's our responsibility as product leaders to help educate and get them adopted, and help them realize the value. So again, just switching the dynamic around expectations that we have of our customers and expectations we have of ourselves. Why does this happen? I alluded to it earlier, but your customers are so busy. I would love to say that all of my customers waited around every morning for me to me and my team to build something and to release new capabilities. But it's just not the case. Most of us don't have that cult-like following, and we are really fighting for attention here. We have some information here around from LexisNexis. They said 51% of professionals believe they're almost at the breaking point. People are looking to do more than they have in the past. Their days are not the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5s. You've got, challenges managing your personal life with your professional life. And so there's just more going on. I can tell you right now, I just received a text message from my wife asking me to pick something up on my way home from work. Like, there are things that are just going on that, in everyone's life. The second facet here is that people are being bombarded. If you stop to count on any given day the number of messages you see, marketing messages, communications from your family and friends. This information was pulled from the Futures Company. They surveyed a number of people, and they said, you're looking at over 5,000 messages per day. Like, that is a lot to cut through. And so, our expectation around publishing out this release note and thinking people are going to understand what's going on and adopt what we're doing it's no longer enough. Some of the problems with just having this release notes process is, the first is that it's a single email. It's just really easy to overlook, right? You flag things, maybe you don't read it, you save it for later, and before you know it, it's buried at the bottom of your inbox. The second issue that you have is that it's not personalized. So we all have different users within our products. We have stakeholders that maybe not be in the product all the time, and they have different needs. Customers who are first-time users of your product, or your power users. You have different things that different people care about, and this one mass communication, it's just not personalized. The second, and it's not really the fault of yours at all, but really, an email in most cases is out of context for someone. They'll be looking at this potentially while they're trying to achieve other tasks. They're not necessarily focused on the type of activities or the work that they would normally associate with your product. So, the challenge with this approach is that pulling them through with a release note is really out of context. And the last item here that, I want to share is, in most cases, especially in the enterprise technology space, there's just too much effort for a customer to get started. Now, I'm going to pick on myself for a minute. I've got an example here of release notes that I had sent out at a prior company, and I blocked out the names to keep those involved innocent. But this was an example of a release note that I'd sent out, right? So we had 2 features that we were communicating. I had let me share the work we went through to get to this stage. And again, the work the work involved in getting this in place, and the result that follows just is a complete imbalance. So to start off with, I had to go to my R&D team, and I needed to get them to pull a list of me of all active users. Luckily for us, we have email addresses and identifiers, so I had the ability to send an email to someone. But we don't have any other information on them. We don't have their first name, last name, their role, what company they work with. We just have this list of people. I then had to take that list. I went over to my marketing team because they have an email service provider, and I had to borrow that for this communication. And so I had to get that list imported. And again, there's no segmentation involved. I'm just sending this out to everyone here. And because in this particular product case, my call to action was to contact your success manager, right? If you're interested in this stuff, it's not go use it now. It was go call somebody. So again, that's a really high threshold for someone to take action. So you look at, I've highlighted in red here the result, and it wasn't good. The open rate of this particular email, is around 10% open rate. The industry open rate's around 20% for this type of communication. So that wasn't great. And the end goal that I was trying to achieve was having customers actually using what we had launched. And after about 3 months after the launch had occurred, we had 2 active customers. And we had set goals much, much higher than this. So, this was a challenge that we're really needing to face. And, what I want to share next is that this is possible to do, knowing that how much effort goes into just publishing out a release note. How we address this going forward is really by creating a release experience. And, I've listed here this definition. It's a series of personalized interactions with your customers to guide them along a journey, to become first aware of the feature, to second is to start using and adopting it, and the third and most important of all is their ability to realize the value of using it. All right, so that encompasses a lot. So what I'd like to do next is to break down some of the core facets around the product experience. So we've got 5 tenets listed here. The first is that you want to start by letting them know that something is coming. You have a great opportunity here because something that's coming that you have a strong belief that we value because you validate it with your customer base. So you have the ability to build this tension, to build up something that they're going to be excited about and learn about. So like piquing their interest early on. The second tenet here is that you can use your own product as a marketing channel. Email, like I said, you have the ability to reach out to people, and but it's not in the context of when they're trying to achieve whatever task that your product helps them with. So using your product as a marketing channel is another core facet of building out a release experience. The third item here, and this is something that we did at Marketo, I think really well, is that you want to provide a persistent place for them to learn more. And this has 2 benefits really to, as far as your benefits to your customers, that one, you're helping them know that you've got a persistent place where they can come back and look through the history of your releases and see what they may have missed, right? So there's that aspect of giving them the comfort to know that when they're ready with something, they have a place to go learn about it. And the second is you have the ability to put a lot more detail into what you're communicating about your product, is about what is being released. So you can incorporate things like screenshots or rich media. You can have, again, walkthrough tutorials that are built. So all of these things, add up to, again, this larger release experience that they can take, that you can provide to your customers. The fourth item here is that you want to make it easy. We talked about there's just so much going on. I can't tell you how many times that I wanted to try something new, and I started in on it, became completely frustrated, killed the whole activity, and walked onto something else. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't have the time, and something else was pulling my attention off, and it needed to be easy. So going back to using your product as a marketing channel, you also now have the ability to use your product and guide people through how to get set up with something. And again, we'll go into some concrete examples of how this looks. The last item here, and I would say one of the most important, is you need the ability to measure the engagements with your customers in order for you to have personalized follow-ups. Now, I know that for those who have been hearing about personalization and segmentation for a long time, this is I think acknowledged and desired, and up until now it hasn't been overly easy to do so. In my own experience, having to mesh information across different systems, whether it's in my CRM or it's in my marketing automation platform, or if it's something that I pulled from my own product logs. This information makes it difficult to measure effectively, but what you're trying to achieve here, again, I think there's 3 things. The first is that you put in a lot of energy and social capital into getting your organization to build something. you want to be able to come back to them with success around what it is that you launched, how many customers are using it, and did it meet the expectations that you set ahead of time around your adoption goals. That's the first item. The second, you want to be able to get not just the volume of customers that are using your feature, you want to be able to get qualitative feedback from customers that have used it. So the ability to know which customers, which segment that they're in, which I would say, potentially subscription that they're using or a particular level that they have bought, being able to tie those things together to reach out to the right customers to get feedback from, I think is the second. And the third is the ability to have a personalized follow-up. At Marketo, I'll share with you, so we did, I think, a really good job around what we would host a webinar after the event, or after we launched something, and we would have a very special event for our champions. So we had a very passionate group of customers, and we had a special invitation just for them. And then we also had a larger webinar. Again, it was a more interactive experience that we're having with our customers, but we held it specifically with people who did not yet use the feature. So we were still trying to evangelize and make the awareness known. So again, we had all of the product leaders available for Q&A. We each did a very short presentation around what it is we were doing and talking about why it is that was valuable. So again, these are the 5 tenets of a successful release experience. So let me take a minute now and put this into a linear sequence. Like, how am I going to execute on this? So you have kind of that first step, which is what's coming. And you have different personas, and then know that they have different value propositions. So you have now 2 vehicles. One is through an announcement within your product, and the second is an announcement leading up to helping them build the anticipation around what's coming. Again, you have 2 channels that you can play with. Now, when I've presented this in the past, people often kind of look at this as being spammy. You're like, okay, great. Yeah, I know I've got these big issues with people having too much going on, and all you're really doing is putting more out there. Well, you now have the solutions in place to where you can orchestrate this across channels. If you know someone has viewed the notice within your product, you don't need to send that email to them. Or likewise, if you know you've sent the email out to someone, they haven't seen the in-product notice, you can remove that in-product notice knowing that they have had the context already. So again, because you're able to trigger off of these activities, you can provide a much tailored experience by persona based on who they are, and actually reduce the noise that would typically have been sent out through like this blast type method. So that's the first, kind of building out what's coming by persona, using your product, using the channels that are available to you to reach them effectively. Now, at the time of the launch, so when the feature actually becomes available, again, you have the same opportunity. You can tailor these messages to the specific personas, leveraging both of these channels to make sure that you are reaching the right people and in the context of when it makes sense for them. And from here, this is where it becomes in the follow-up stages, right? So you have also, as part of this launch step, you have this persistent location. So we created a knowledge base. So we had listed in this knowledge base, it was actually 2 parts that we used in the past at Marketo. It was, we had this vibrant community of users, and they were sharing ideas all the time. So we took advantage of the fact that this is where, a lot of our users were spending their time. So we put that, our release notes out right in front of them in the community, allowed them to participate with providing feedback in the community, as well as providing information around the release in this knowledge base. And again, the benefits of doing this is that you have a place where they know they can go when they're ready. And you also can put in additional information around what, deeper details around the value of what you're doing, and even how to get started, letting them understand what expectations are involved. And I mentioned this before, so following the release, and again, depending on your customers, the timing can vary on when you want to host this. But we would host a webinar. And again, we had 2 very different groups. We had a very, a power user group that we were looking to address. And then we also had people who hadn't really heard of it. So we had really hosted 2 different sessions that gave us the ability to personalize this webinar for who we were planning to meet with, because the questions differed, right? People who didn't know about what was going on with the release, had no idea that we just launched something new. They had a very different set of questions than someone who had used the product already and are a power user of what we were doing. So, you want to make sure that you're able to tailor these experiences based upon what the people have done with your product and who they are. And again, a follow-up, being able to measure effectively and then to remind people coming back. Again, this is a bit of a catch-all, right? So you can now know who's yet to engage with your product, send a very personalized note back out to them as a, hey, we've launched this great feature. We see that you haven't taken advantage of it. One, help us understand why. And if you're too busy, here's the knowledge base where when you're ready, you can get used with the product. So again, combining all of these things is building out that journey for them. I mean, it's as much more about putting the information into your customers' hands and letting them operate, and then you providing easy vehicles in which you can help them to adopt your product. Again, that's your goal at the end of the day, is to help your customers. You've released something new in the product that you believe will help. I mean, if you don't believe it, then you're building the wrong stuff. But you believe it's going to help your customers, and you want to make it easy as possible for them to become aware of it, to adopt it, and then ultimately realize the value. So here's an example of, there's a company called Follows. I don't know if you've heard of them. So it's an account-based marketing solution. They have, as far as their release, this is, I think a couple of months ago, they had launched a new set of capabilities around introducing account-based marketing campaigns. And so this is a great example. This was powered by Apptrinsic. They had built anticipation and awareness around, one, the problem that they're trying to solve, and that they've got something coming. They hosted a webinar as part of this awareness campaign ahead of their release. At the time the release came into availability for their customers, they then sent in-product notices as well as notifications out through email, different channels, and they saying, hey, it's available now. We know you're aware of it, and you have the opportunity now to see within the product what type of things that they can adopt it. And they didn't stop there. So this is where we talked about having personalized guides and helping them onboard and actually adopt it. Because they had two different users. They know they had a sales user of their platform and a marketing user of their platform. So each of them has a different value associated with what they've launched. So for their sales counterparts, you can talk about empowering them to be mini marketers, right? So being able to create content boards that their sales teams can use. And so they had very specific messages tailored to each of those audiences. So when they logged into the product, they saw that something was new and available, and they were then provided with this guide that helped them adopt this feature. So we'll talk about the effort to pull this off in a second, but the result that they had got, they were extremely happy with. They had doubled the number of engaged customers as part of this release. The product team was happy, the marketing team was happy. As an organization, they were thrilled to be able to, one, identify a problem in the market and then get it into the hands of their customers in such a way that made it easy for them to use. So I mentioned the effort before. So what is keeping, what's been keeping all of us from creating these release experiences? From what I can share, the first issue is that you have disconnected data on your users and your customers relative to what they're doing in your product. So you have information on your customers in your CRM. You'll have what they purchased. You'll have their success manager. You'll have all of this information related to what they had bought. You have information in your marketing automation systems, if you're set up that way, to know what are the types of information that they had already engaged with, and type of information that they had read up on related to your product, to understand what were their interests in what you were doing. And then you have, within your own R&D team, you have a set of analytics in most places where you have user IDs and you have people who are taking specific actions in your product. And you have a set of reports that you have built primarily through the back end of your own R&D investment to get visibility to product usage. So all of these different data sets have historically been disconnected. And that pulling this information together to get this holistic picture of who your customers are relative to what they do with your product has been very, very difficult to come by. So that's issue number one. The second challenge is that, as all product leaders, you are constantly making trade-off decisions, right? So, I've heard the argument that, if if you need to guide your customers through your experience, then your usability is terrible. And that's not always true. I find that when you can have the best user experience, but you've invested a lot to make that happen, and your customers still need the ability to be helped through that process. You don't always want to leave it to chance that they're going to figure it out and they're going to lock in on your design choices. So coming back to that, there's always this argument around, well, we'll just build the end product experience ourselves. We've got a development team. Why can't we do it? And I can tell you, making this trade-off decision is very hard. And personally, I've always had to make a decision around the must-haves and the core capabilities of what we were delivering, and the experience. And again, for right or wrong, this got put into this nice-to-have bucket. So we always had to focus on our delivering the capability of our core competency first. So again, that trade-off decision is very hard to make. Again, but it's a challenge that keeps you from creating this release experience. The next item up, your analytics solutions, they are disconnected from your engagement solutions. I mentioned before, I pulled a list of who was using my product. And I had to then go out into my marketing team, use their engagement solution, which at the time was a marketing automation platform, and I had to borrow it from them. They didn't have any context of who was using my product. And so unless I was slicing this information up and creating segments before I put it in there was no data for them to help engage more effectively, right? So I was having to do all of that outside of that system because it was disconnected from where our product analytics were sitting, right? So independently, I knew that I had 10 different customers using a specific feature. I didn't know necessarily which user within that company. I didn't know what the status was within that organization. As far as them being a happy customer, an unhappy customer, so there was no information there. So having your engagement systems disconnected from your analytics is another big challenge that it inhibits you from creating this release experience. And the last item here, I shared before, but bridging these gaps manually, it consumes a lot of time that you just don't have. I mean, you go back to the amount of energy that you put into creating frankly, a well-intended but not effective release note, and sending that out to all your customers, it took a lot of energy just to get to that stage, right? So, so the hope that I want to share with everyone today is that there are solutions in place now in market that allow this to be possible. So you have now the ability to meet the needs of your customers, which is going to result in really what you want is to help them take advantage of using your product. So again, you're going to have a great release when you create a release experience and you start thinking in terms of these 5 tenets that we talked about. So with that, I'll switch over. I think we're moving to the Q&A section. So if you've been posting questions on Twitter, Nick's going to take a look and put me on the spot, make me cry. Hopefully I have answers for you.
That was awesome, Travis. Thank you so much. I mean,
Sure.
We've all been product leaders and experienced a lot of the stuff that you were just talking about. It's super important. And for Q&A, we're just going to kick off with our first question here from, it says, how long after your product release should you wait before reaching out to a customer to get feedback?
Oh, okay. Oh, so how long after you release do you wait before reaching out to customers? So, I hate answering with it depends, but it really depends on your product, and it depends on what operationally, how frequently they use it, and what amount of time does it take for them to realize value. So I'll use the example we had at AdBridge. So what our product was doing was helping marketers bridge the gap between knowing who was an ideal person to go target and then making that same set of people available in your advertising solutions. So what we ended up doing, in order for the customer to realize value of that, it wasn't the act of just using it. They actually had to execute a campaign, give it an amount of time for that campaign to execute properly, and then look at the results afterwards. So did they achieve the result, which was the promise of this product, was you're going to have an increased return on your ad spend, and did you actually achieve it? So in most cases, there was a 3-week to even a month of campaign execution before we would know. So the communications that we did as far as reaching out to customers, the first was people who started to use it, right? So I wanted to get it on their radar that, that we would love to get their feedback on the quality of the use of the product. And then the second, engagement with my customer came back over a month later to see, well, how did that campaign run? Was it effective? Did this achieve what you're trying to do? So the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. And it depends on what is the time it takes your customer to realize value and how frequently do they do a given activity that you're trying to
Makes sense. Makes
forward
sense.
to.
And this next question is a two-part question. It's, do you think persona-based marketing communication is a prerequisite for building a strong product release experience? And if not, how would you recommend stepping around these personas?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a great question. So I don't think it's necessarily a prerequisite. Now, I'll say that you want to have, your ideal state is that you want to have personas defined, and you'll be able to market differently to those personas. The reason I say it's not a prerequisite is that you also have personas that are emerging based upon the use of your product, right? So you have this concept of power users. You have, infrequent users. They are also, in a way, a persona that you can deliver this type of product experience to if for some reason you don't yet have kind of this persona-based marketing approach in organization. So yeah, great question.
I love these questions coming in because they're right up our alley. So so this next one here is, how do you measure the impact of the value of what's released into the market?
Oh gosh, that's great. So so this one, again, is a little bit of it depends. I think there is a lot of it is a quality-based feature. So if your product has the ability to show them, to demonstrate the value, I'll play back the example of Marketo. So, we had customers who were executing programs. So the value they got, they have some initial value around executing a program easily and quickly. But the actual value was, did they effectively create better marketing? And so we ended up having to look at the successes that they had with the programs, and was that success growing as they used more and more capabilities. So if your product has the ability to show the value, which I highly recommend if you've got the ability to build that capability to demonstrate your product itself, the value, I think that's one component. The second component here is having qualitative feedback from specific customers. If you are as an organization going after a specific, ideal customer profile, like, get their feedback, and have a few interviews that you've done with customers to be as a reference for success as well. So it's a combination of usage, specifically around the value that they get when they use it, and then tie that to, what would be more work on your part to get this information, but what really matters is how they felt it impacted, or how they felt it increased value.
Cool. Here's another interesting one. It says, in highly agile SaaS environments where feature sets can change mid-release,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how far in advance would you announce a feature for a release? And how do you think about sort of, I guess, nurturing people into the release?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this one, you're reliant a lot on your R&D counterparts here, right? So if you're adopting an agile practice, you want to make sure that you've got the agility to switch when you need to, and that dates are not necessarily a primary driver, but the quality of your release. So I would hold off on communicating too far in advance the availability of the feature, because you don't want to set expectations that you can't deliver on.
Yeah.
Right? So if for whatever reason you don't have confidence that you can deliver on a certain time frame, just be cautious. As far as a strict time frame, I don't think there's anything great. I've seen anywhere from a month in advance to anywhere from a week in advance. So, I've seen companies now doing, they're not even telling you about it, but they start to market on social channels. They'll say, like, hey, we've got something awesome coming up. I can't wait to show it to you. They don't even tell you, but those things are coming like days before the release is available. So again, I think there's certainly value to doing that around building anticipation. But again, that a lot of these it depends, and just to you got to have the trust and the backing of your R&D counterparts to be able to do this effectively.
Great, that's great. That's great. And so, last question here is, it's asking for, what tools are you using for tracking metrics and running these engagements?
Oh, well, Nick can answer that one. So we're using AppTrinsic today, and we've done actually a lot of work around associating features we have to the analytics that we measure. So, Nick, if you want to talk about it.
No, I think you're spot on. I mean, yeah, basically what we built at AppTrinsic is essentially to help product leaders run these drills in a very simple and easy way to do them. And so everything that we've built so far, after obviously we came from Marketo, so we had a lot of this capability in our head about how to go do this in our product. Even at Marketo, we were struggling with the ability to execute persona-based engagements of getting people to adopt features and understand the features that are coming out for them, including we were doing a lot of feature rollouts that weren't, to everyone all at once. So how do you stagger the communications and all of those things that happen in the environment? And so the tools to build all this stuff and the real-time segmentation to do these kinds of capabilities was just missing, even in as strong as we were at Marketo doing the things that we do. We didn't have those. And, we built all of these capabilities into the Intrinsic platform. So leveraging the ability to understand all the behavior of your users inside of the platform to instrument your product without actually bugging engineering and making sure you can continue to instrument as new features get rolled out, et cetera. And then running these engagement in a WYSIWYG format in the same way that you can create an email, you create in-app engagements, so you can create multi-channel engagements that help drive people to the right features at the right time is how we were thinking about this. So.
That's great. That actually reminded me of another story that I had. So, speaking with, someone else who's also a product leader, and, we were talking about, well, should you build into your requirements, measurement? And, how do you go about prioritizing that relative to the core feature? And my answer was a little bit, snotty, but I don't want to have to make that choice, right? So I believe with the solutions in market today that you shouldn't have to make a choice anymore. Yes, you want to build an instrument, you have to do that, but you shouldn't have to make a decision around a feature that you need to build for your customers and instrumentation and measurement.
Great. Well, I think we'll give you guys back your 20 minutes for lunch, and this concludes our presentation for today. Remember to come visit us at SaaStr next week. We'll be at little old kiosk number 86, and if you blink, you'll probably pass it. So just think green as we head into St. Patrick's Day, and you'll remember us when you see us. Also, we're giving away hardbound copies of our book, and there's also available for free on our website. So I encourage you guys to check out some of the thought leadership that Mickey Alon and I, the other co-founder of Intrinsic, have written to sort of help do this. But, if you like them more, we're also giving away Apple earbuds and some other stuff as well. So come see us. And at this point, just thank you, everyone, for your time and participation, and really appreciate the thoughtful questions that you guys had today. Thank you.